So here is Zephyr on day 8, and I have a bucket that's kind of off screen here, but working on some positive associations because he really likes our stable feed, seasons feed. So working on that for his reward. And he's been a very interesting horse to work with. You know, he's taken a little bit longer with some things, but then he's really got a curiosity factor that I've noticed is starting to come out. So just working on here, you know, it's actually pretty good when I'm a little distracted. You can see he's kind of thinking here that, hey, that was some pretty tasty stuff. And so I'm actually going to reward that. And he's getting a little bit better with taking it from my hand. And here's kind of a view of the stable feed, seasons feed. It's called the Biome Blend. So it's got a hay pellet called sainfoin, which is actually an old hay that used to be used. And it's actually got incredible benefits to it. Lots of anti-inflammatories. And so it's got a good mix of really good things in it, and it's nice and balanced, so he seems to really like it. So just here working on giving a little bit of a touch and then doing a reward. So he got a little bit nervous, but again, when he gets nervous, I'm not really going to have a reaction. I'm just going to ignore it. And then I'm going to go back and try and repeat. And I'm going to be very clear. Again, when I do this, I use a cluck sound that I make to kind of bridge the gap for them. And then making sure I stick my hand straight out. So again, he still gets a little worried here. Kind of the beginning of the sessions, it's like he's got to warm up to the idea a little bit. But that's okay. That was really nice. And again, you'll see I'll create a little bit of movement with my hand because I found that he stays a little bit more relaxed with that rhythmic movement. And again, just the positive associations with being near me. And I always find it interesting how each Mustang is different with their taste, just like how people can be. I've had some that will only eat stud muffins, or some that only like Buckeye treats, or so they're all really different, but definitely his favorite so far is the stable feed, seasons feed. And so you see he got a little worried there. I was just doing a little bit of work, or when he got worried, to try to see if I could keep my hand there, keeping my heart rate low. So just trying to build up that partnership with him a little bit. And he wants to kind of move around. And again, I'm just trying to keep things pretty simple. And you'll see every now and then I will be kind of looking in. This is my phone on the panel. And it's pretty handy to be able to look into the phone when I'm kind of waiting for a reaction, because then I can really take a lot of the pressure off of him. It's nice, I can sit there and watch him. So every now and then you'll see me kind of looking, making sure I'm in the shot of the camera as well. And this is actually really nice right here. And again, my two working students, they're actually working their horses at the same time. So that's where we have to figure out the ways that we can film ourselves. And I also think it's really good that you know, we have the different pins right around, so the horses have to learn to really focus on us and not really worry about what's going on in a pin next to them. You can see he still has a little bit of reactiveness there. Now I'm going to ask him to move forward. So after a while of doing kind of that slow work, I still want them, they have to be able to move around. So getting control of the feet a little bit, moving in a direction. And anytime he kind of asks to stop and look at me, I'm still going to ask to send him forward and keeping the cue always consistent. So using my left hand to direct and then using my right hand as the pressure. And this becomes what I go to every single time. So if I try to do trailer loading or sending over an obstacle, I'm going to do the same exact thing. So then they understand and know what that means. So again, after he did some movement and came to a stop, I rewarded him for that. So he's starting to learn how to turn on and turn off energy, which I think is really important. So now trying to go to the right, which is the harder side. And again, each horse is very different, so I would say most oftentimes the right side's a little bit harder because they're so conditioned as we are to the left side. But every now and then you get a horse that's a little bit different. But he's pretty classically, right side's a little bit harder. So I'm not going to worry about sticking my feet still, which I start to advance that a little further, where I try to really keep my feet still and get them to move their feet. But I'm just going to ask him here to keep moving his feet around me. And he wants to get a little stuck. And then I will ask for the yield. So he was constantly asking to kind of stop, to look at me, stop, to look at me. And I didn't want to reward when he did it without me asking, because I got to build those blocks up to that. And then when I asked for it and then he released, then I gave him the reward. So now I'm going to go back and work on more touching. And again, you can see kind of his body language is always leaning a bit away. And that's just still not having that confidence or trust in me as much yet. Well, it's just what I have to build on. And the way I like to start is if I can get them confident with me kind of touching all over their body and taking away that kind of predatory response that I'm going to hurt them, then building that trust comes even more. So anytime that I feel like he kind of gave me a nice response, I'm going to say, hey, that was a pretty good boy. And he thinks that's a pretty good idea, getting his tasty treat. You can see now he's getting a little bit more comfortable. I'm able to kind of walk right into that wither shoulder area and building up that foundation for actually getting on him, because putting that pressure on the withers, kind of putting my hand on the shoulder like that, those are like the baby steps for getting on. And he's pretty darn cute. I really like this guy's personality. And once we get through that reactiveness, I really think he is a sweetheart. He just has to understand that he is in a safe place. There, I just tried to do a little bit of kind of moving on the neck, kind of pulling a little bit on the neck. Again, those are a little bit of building blocks for if I was to jump on bareback. Obviously, he is not ready for that quite yet. So I have to build that up. So the fact that I did that, he got worried. So now I have to go back a little bit and rinse and repeat, as you could say. So go back, build up the tinier steps before. So here I'm also using the lead rope a little bit to kind of go and touch on his shoulder. And then I'm going to give him a bigger release, because I know with him that sometimes he needs a little bit more time to think about and process. I'm going to ask him to yield his haunches there. Just because, again, when I go to start jumping up on them, their response tends to be to scoot forward, and you always want them to be thinking of moving the hind end away from you. And like, for instance, that right there. So he was really good with my left hand with the rope going, but I hadn't initiated the right hand. So I had to go back and say, hey, the right hand touching as well is okay, because two hands are different than one. So I'm just going to go back and say, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. You can handle two hands. But again, because each horse is different, sometimes they handle it pretty fine, but then sometimes with the more reactive ones, you have to break it down into those smaller steps. And it's very interesting with the Mustangs, because they can just let us know how to be a little bit more aware. So of the mistakes that we make, which the mistake was for me, I didn't have him prepared for the two hands yet. So I had to go back and help him figure out that that's not a bad thing. And again, it helps because I have the bucket set farther away, so I'm able to give him the reward and then kind of also give him the release as well. That was pretty good. And then also trying to work on getting him to get used to kind of rubbing. I haven't done the patting yet because, again, I like to train my horses to perceive patting as a reward, because most people will do that. But they tend to, in the beginning, that's too much energy for them. So going back, and I was able to work on grabbing his mane a little bit over his neck. And just getting him used to that feeling. He's pretty good about his chest and kind of the throat latch area. And I'm always trying to see if I can find some of those itchy spots, like a little bit under his chin groove here. I got a little bit of a response. But what I like is that he's not real reactive about me touching under there, so that's very good. And I really do like enjoying kind of the closer moments that we're having, and his energy feels really good. So versus a couple of days ago where he was a bit reactive in that blowy feeling, he is much more quiet and softer, and so it feels very comforting to be next to him while we're engaged in this. I was really pleased with kind of the things that we were able to build upon in this session with Zephyr, and yeah, I was really happy with him today.